Taemin floated through the corridor with his toolbox magnetically attached to his belt. The Valdris station was massive, much bigger than any cargo hauler he had worked on before. His sister Heejin had called him 3 times about her broken environmental controls, and each time she sounded more annoyed. He was late, as usual, because he had taken a wrong turn somewhere near the docking bay. The station was crowded with aliens. Taemin had seen plenty of different species during his years working on space stations, but never this many in one place. There were tall ones with 4 arms, small ones that glowed in the dark, and some that looked like they were made of crystal. They all seemed to be moving with purpose, while he was completely lost. He checked his handheld device again. The map showed he should be near Section 7, but all the signs around him said Section 12. He sighed and decided to take another corridor that looked promising. His sister was going to kill him. The new corridor opened into a huge ceremonial hall. Taemin stopped and stared. The ceiling stretched up so high he could barely see it. Hundreds of aliens stood in organized lines, all wearing what looked like ceremonial armor or robes. At the far end of the hall, a massive 4-armed alien sat on a raised platform, speaking in a deep voice that echoed through the space. Taemin realized he had walked into something important. He tried to back away slowly, but an alien with smooth blue skin approached him quickly. "Participant, you are late. The registration ceremony is almost complete," the alien said. At least, that was what Taemin's translation device told him it said. The device was old and sometimes glitchy. "No, I'm not a participant. I'm just looking for Section 7. Environmental repairs," Taemin said, holding up his toolbox as proof. The blue alien looked confused. It said something, but the translation device crackled and only gave Taemin fragments. Honor. Earth. Final. Champion. Ceremony. "I'm from Earth, yes, but I'm not a champion of anything." The alien grabbed his arm with surprising strength and pulled him toward the line. Taemin tried to protest, but the alien was insistent. Before he knew what was happening, he was standing in front of the 4-armed alien on the platform. "The final participant has arrived," the 4-armed alien announced. Its voice boomed through the hall. "State your name and homeworld for the official record." Taemin's translation device beeped. He was confused but figured if he just answered the question, he could explain the mistake and leave. Taemin. From Earth." The 4-armed alien made a gesture with all 4 hands. The crowd of aliens made a sound that might have been cheering or might have been something else entirely. Taemin's device was crackling with static. "Earth's champion is registered. Let the Millennium Games begin in 14 cycles." Taemin felt his stomach drop. "Millennium Games? Champion?" He raised his hand. "Excuse me, there's been a mistake." But the ceremony was over. The aliens were all leaving the hall, talking among themselves. The 4-armed alien had already moved on to other business. Taemin stood there, holding his toolbox, trying to understand what had just happened. His communication device buzzed. It was Heejin. "Where are you? The habitat is getting cold." Taemin walked out of the hall in a daze and finally found his way to Section 7. His sister met him at the door of her habitat, arms crossed. She was 3 years older than him and had never let him forget it. "You're 2 hours late," she said. "I got registered for something called the Millennium Games," Taemin said, setting down his toolbox. Heejin's annoyed expression changed to shock. "You what?" "I don't know. I walked into a ceremony, and there was a translation problem. And now, apparently, I'm Earth's champion in some kind of games." His sister grabbed his shoulders. "Taemin, the Millennium Games are the most important combat tournament in the galaxy. Warriors train their entire lives for it. It only happens once every 1,000 years. Combat tournament?" Taemin felt his stomach drop even further. "I don't know how to fight." "I won." Heejin pulled him inside and immediately called Ambassador Kyung-soo. The ambassador arrived 30 minutes later. looking like he had aged 10 years. He was a dignified man in his 60s, who had spent his entire career building good relationships with other species. "Tell me this is a joke," Kyung-soo said. "I wish it was," Taemin replied. The ambassador sat down heavily. "Do you understand what you've done? Once a champion is registered, they cannot withdraw. It's a treaty law. If Earth's champion withdraws, it would be seen as a grave insult. We could face trade sanctions, diplomatic isolation. Can't you just explain it was a mistake?" Taemin asked. "I tried. I've spent the last hour talking to the High Arbiter. He says the registration is binding. Your name is in the official record." Kyung-soo rubbed his temples. "The games begin in 2 weeks, 14 days. Hee-jin paced back and forth. There has to be a legal loophole. Some way to get him out of this. I've already assigned 3 legal experts to search every treaty document we have," Kyung-soo said. "But I'm not hopeful." Taemin felt numb. "What happens if I lose?" "When you lose," Kyung-soo corrected gently, "Earth will be embarrassed. But at least we will have participated honorably. The other species will respect that we tried." "How bad is this tournament?" Taemin asked. Hee-jin pulled up a video on her screen. It showed the previous Millennium Games, held 1,000 years ago. Taemin watched as warriors performed incredible feats. One moved so fast the camera could barely track it. Another seemed to manipulate gravity itself. A crystalline warrior shattered a solid metal pillar with a single strike. "The current champion is named Keeks," Hee-jin explained. "He's from a species that lives for thousands of years. He's been training for over 300 years. Most of the other competitors have trained for at least a century. And I have 2 weeks," Taemin said quietly. "I'm sorry," Kyung-soo said. "If there was any other way." After the ambassador left, Taemin sat in silence. Hee-jin made tea, which was her solution to most problems. He held the warm cup and tried to think. "Are you scared?" his sister asked. "Terrified," he admitted. "But I've been in bad situations before. Remember that time the cargo hauler's oxygen system failed, and I had to fix it with parts from the coffee maker? That's different. This is combat against warriors who have trained for lifetimes." "Maybe," Taemin said. "But I have one advantage." "What's that?" "They've all been training in the same way for centuries. Following the same techniques, the same traditions." He set down his tea. "I watched that video. They're all incredibly skilled, but they're also predictable. They do what they've been taught to do." Hee-jin looked at him with worry. "I'll figure it out as I go. It's what I always do." He managed a small smile. "Can you get me more videos of the tournament? And information about the competitors?" "Tried. 80 way. Tried. 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 Tried." His sister nodded slowly. "You're actually going to try to win?" "Probably not," Taemin said honestly. "But I'm not going to just give up either. I've got 2 weeks to learn everything I can. Maybe I'll surprise everyone. Maybe you'll get yourself killed. Then at least Earth will have an interesting story to tell." He stood up and stretched. "Now, about your environmental controls. I should probably fix those before I become the galaxy's most famous loser." Hee-jin laughed despite herself. It was a small sound, but it made Taemin feel a little better. He picked up his toolbox and got to work. The air recycler was easier to understand than his current situation, and he took comfort in that. One problem at a time. That was how he had always lived his life. Outside the habitat, the massive station continued its preparations for the Millennium Games. Somewhere in the ceremonial halls, the greatest warriors in the galaxy were meditating, training, and preparing for glory. And in a small habitat in Section 7, a human engineer fixed a broken air filter and tried not to think about the impossible task ahead of him. Taemin spent his first day watching videos. Hee-jin had found archived footage of every Millennium Games going back 5,000 years. There was a lot to watch. He sat in a corner of his sister's habitat with a screen and a notepad, trying to make sense of what he saw. A young woman knocked on the habitat door around midday. She was Korean like them, maybe 25 years old, with quick eyes and nervous energy. She introduced herself as Ji Woo, a data analyst who worked on the station. "I heard about what happened," Ji Woo said. "Everyone on the station is talking about it. The human who accidentally became a champion." "Great," Taemin muttered. "I'm famous for being an idiot. Actually, I wanted to help." Ji Woo held up a data pad. "I work with statistics and pattern analysis. I've been collecting data on every competitor in the games. Fighting styles, victory patterns, preferred techniques. I thought maybe you could use it." Taemin looked at Heijin, who nodded. "We'll take any help we can get." Ji Woo sat down and started showing him the data. She had created profiles for all 48 competitors. Each profile included biological information, training history, previous combat records, and detailed analysis of their fighting styles. "This is incredible," Taemin said, scrolling through the information. "This must have taken you weeks. I like organizing data," Ji Woo said with a small smile. "And I figured Earth's champion should at least have good information. Even if..." She trailed off. "Even if he has no chance of winning?" Taemin finished. "It's okay. I know the odds." For the next 3 days, Taemin studied. He watched hundreds of hours of combat footage. Ji Woo came by every day with updated analysis. She pointed out patterns he missed, explained techniques he didn't understand, and helped him build a picture of what he was facing. "They're all really good at what they do," Taemin said on the 4th day. "But they're all doing the same things their masters taught them. Look at this warrior, Silkor the Blade Dancer. He's been fighting for 180 years. He's won 73 major tournaments," Ji Woo added. "Right. And in every single match, he starts with the same opening sequence. The same exact moves. It's beautiful. It's perfect. But it's identical every time." Ji Woo pulled up more footage. "You're right. It's a ritual kata, part of his training tradition, which means I know exactly what he'll do in the first 30 seconds of the match." Taemin made a note. "What about the others?" They went through each competitor. The patterns were everywhere. Warriors who had trained in formal schools, with rigid traditions. They executed flawless techniques, but rarely deviated from what they had been taught. Even when they improvised, it was within the boundaries of their training. "They're like complex machines," Taemin said, "perfectly designed for specific tasks. But machines are predictable if you understand how they work." On the 5th day, Taemin tried to start physical training. The station had public training facilities, and he went there early in the morning to avoid crowds. He tried some basic exercises he had learned in school: push-ups, running, stretching. After 30 minutes, he was exhausted. An alien was watching him from across the training area. It had 8 limbs and moved with fluid grace. It approached slowly. "You are Earth's champion," the alien said. "Unfortunately, yes," Taemin said between breaths. "I am Voreth. I was once a warrior. Now, I am retired. I came to watch the games and perhaps write my memoirs." The alien gestured at Taemin's exercise routine. "That will not help you. I know. I don't have time to learn how to fight properly. I'm just trying to get in better shape." Voreth made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are refreshingly honest about your doom. Most warriors facing death would pretend confidence. What's the point? Everyone knows I'm going to lose." "True." Voreth settled into a resting position. "But I am curious. What is your strategy?" Taemin wiped sweat from his face. "I'm treating it like an engineering problem. Study the system, find the weaknesses, figure out a solution. Combat is not engineering. Everything is engineering if you think about it the right way." Taemin stood up. "These warriors are predictable. They've perfected their techniques over centuries, which means those techniques are fixed, unchanging. I don't have perfected techniques. I barely have any techniques at all. And this is an advantage? Maybe. If they know exactly what they're going to do, And I don't know what I'm going to do? Then at least one of us is going to be surprised. Taemin shrugged. It's not much of a plan. But it's what I have. Vorath was quiet for a moment. I will watch your matches with great interest. Your defeat should at least be educational. The alien left, and Taemin went back to his exercises. But he kept thinking about what he had said. Predictability was a weakness. Perfection was rigid. Maybe there was something there. He changed his training approach. Instead of trying to learn proper combat techniques, he started practicing adaptation. Ji-woo helped him set up random scenarios. She would call out situations, and he had to respond immediately, without thinking. Opponent on your left. Taemin rolled right and grabbed the nearest object. Weapon breaks. He threw the object and ran. Trapped in a corner. He looked for exits, for weapons, for anything useful. They trained like this for hours. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't traditional. But Taemin started to get faster at responding to unexpected situations. His body learned to move before his mind finished thinking. On the 8th day, Ji-woo brought news. Your first match is assigned. You'll face Silkor, the blade dancer. Taemin pulled up Silkor's profile. The one who always starts with the same opening. He's considered one of the most skilled warriors in the tournament. The betting markets give you a 0.1% chance of winning. That high? Taemin joked. I'm flattered. But he studied Silkor's footage obsessively. The blade dancer was incredible. His movements were so fast and precise, they looked supernatural. Every strike was placed perfectly. Every defense was timed flawlessly. In 180 years of competition, he had only lost 3 times. How did he lose those 3 matches? Taemin asked. Ji-woo pulled up the data. Twice to warriors who were significantly faster than him. Once to a warrior who used poison, which was later banned. So he's only vulnerable to overwhelming advantage or cheating. Basically, yes. Taemin leaned back and stared at the ceiling. I can't outfight him. I can't match his speed or skill. But maybe I don't need to. Doomaniver Muncher. Doomaniver Muncher. Doomaniver Muncher. Doomaniver Muncher. Doomaniver Muncher. Doomaniver Muncher. What do you mean? He's trained to fight warriors. People who will face him directly. Technique against technique. What if I don't fight him at all? The rules say you have to engage in combat. Combat doesn't mean standing still and trading blows. Taemin sat up with sudden energy. The arena has terrain, right? Features? Obstacles? Yes, the grand arena has variable terrain. Each match has a different configuration. Then I need to see the arena. Can you get me access? Ji-woo made some calls. The next day, she got him a maintenance pass to enter the arena during setup. Taemin walked through the massive space, studying every detail. The floor panels, the gravity generators, the environmental controls. It was all technology he understood. This is just a really big room with fancy equipment, he said. It's the most sacred combat space in the galaxy, Ji-woo corrected. It's also full of things I can use. Taemin knelt down and examined a floor panel. These are modular. They can be loosened with the right tool. You're planning to sabotage the arena? I'm planning to use every advantage I have. Silkor has trained for 180 years in formal combat. I've been a maintenance engineer for 7 years. Let's see which skill set is more useful. On the 13th day, Taemin did something unexpected. He stopped training. Instead, he rested. He ate good food. He slept. He took walks around the station. Ji-woo thought he had given up, but Hee-jin understood. You're letting your mind relax so it can work better tomorrow, she said. Exactly. I've studied everything I can study. I've prepared as much as I can prepare. Now, I need to trust that I'll figure it out when the time comes. Are you scared? Yes. But I've been scared before. I'll be scared again. Fear is just information telling you to be careful. The night before the match, Ambassador Kyung-soo came to visit. He looked tired, but tried to smile. I won't tell you to win, the ambassador said. That would be unfair. I just want you to know that Earth is proud you're trying. That's more than anyone could ask. Thank you, Taemin said. I'll do my best. After everyone left, Taemin lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he would face a warrior with 180 years of training. A warrior who had won 73 tournaments. A warrior who moved like lightning and struck like thunder. And Taemin would face him with 2 weeks of figuring it out. He should have been terrified. He was terrified. But underneath the fear, there was something else. Curiosity. The same curiosity that made him take apart machines to see how they worked. Silcor, the blade dancer, was just another complex system. And Taemin had always been good at understanding systems. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would be interesting, if nothing else. The grand arena was filled with thousands of spectators from hundreds of different species. Taemin had never seen so many aliens in one place. The noise was overwhelming, a mixture of sounds his translator couldn't properly interpret. He stood in the waiting chamber, wearing the simple combat suit Earth had provided. It felt thin compared to the elaborate armor he had seen other warriors wearing. Jiwoo was there with him, checking her datapad nervously. The betting markets are going crazy. Some people are putting money on you just because the odds are so long. How long? 500 to 1. Taemin laughed. It was either laugh or panic. If I win, someone is going to be very rich. The door opened. A small floating drone entered and spoke in a mechanical voice. Earth Champion Taemin, you are summoned to the arena. He walked down the corridor toward the light. His heart was pounding. His hands felt cold, but his mind was surprisingly clear. He had studied Silcor for days. He knew what to expect. Probably. The arena floor was huge. The terrain for this match was rocky, with scattered boulders and uneven ground. Taemin noticed the floor panels beneath the artificial rock, modular, just like he had seen during his maintenance visit. Silcor entered from the opposite side. The blade dancer was tall and thin, with 4 arms that ended in sharp, blade-like appendages. His species had evolved for combat. Every movement was graceful and efficient. He wore traditional robes that seemed to flow like water. The High Arbiter Velen stood on a raised platform above the arena, his 4 arms raised for silence. This match will follow traditional rules. Combat continues until one warrior yields, is incapacitated, or death occurs. Warriors, acknowledge the rules. Acknowledged, Silcor said. His voice was calm and musical. Acknowledged, Taemin said. His voice cracked slightly. Begin. Silcor immediately launched into his opening sequence. Taemin had watched this sequence 100 times on video. The blade dancer moved through a series of perfect strikes, a ritual kata that demonstrated his skill and honored his training tradition. Taemin did something no warrior had ever done in response to this sacred opening. He ran away. The crowd made a sound of shock. Running from the opening kata was seen as deeply disrespectful. But Taemin wasn't interested in respect. He was interested in surviving. He sprinted toward a cluster of boulders, using them as cover. Silcor completed his kata and then pursued. His movements were incredibly fast. The blade arms whistled through the air. Taemin ducked behind a boulder, just as one of the blades sliced through the space where his head had been. You dishonor the sacred traditions, Silcor called out. Sorry. He kept moving, using the terrain like an obstacle course. Roll behind this rock, sprint to that boulder, slide under this overhang. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't honorable, but it was keeping him alive. Silcor pursued with perfect technique. Every strike was placed exactly where Taemin would be if he moved predictably. But Taemin wasn't moving predictably. He was moving like a panicked engineer, trying to escape a broken machine. The crowd was divided. Some were shocked by the lack of honor. Others were fascinated by this strange human behavior. In the private viewing box, Master Vorath leaned forward. Interesting, he murmured. Taemin led Silcor on a chase around the arena. He was getting tired, his breath coming in gasps. The blade dancer showed no signs of fatigue. This couldn't continue. He needed to change the situation. He remembered the floor panels. During his maintenance visit, he had noticed that one section had loose fasteners. He had meant to report it but forgot. Now he was grateful for his own forgetfulness. He ran toward that section, making sure Silcor was following. The warrior was getting frustrated. The sacred forms didn't include techniques for chasing cowardly opponents. "Face me with honor," Silcor demanded. "Okay." Taemin stopped running and turned around. He stood on the loose panel. Silcor immediately launched his legendary finishing technique, the Four-Blade Storm. Taemin had watched this technique end dozens of matches. It was beautiful and absolutely deadly. Silcor closed the distance in seconds. His four-blade arms began their intricate pattern, a storm of strikes that covered every possible escape route. It was the culmination of 180 years of training. Taemin kicked the loose floor panel. The panel flipped up, catching Silcor's lower blade arm. The warrior stumbled. His perfect technique disrupted. For just a moment, his balance was broken. Taemin stepped aside and stuck out his foot. Silcor the Blade Dancer, winner of 73 tournaments, master of the sacred forms, tripped and fell flat on his face. The arena went completely silent. Taemin quickly grabbed a piece of the loose panel and held it like a club. Silcor lay there for a moment, probably trying to process what had just happened. In 180 years of combat, he had never tripped. The sacred texts didn't include techniques for recovering from tripping. "I yield," he said quietly. The High Arbiter's voice boomed across the arena. "Victory to Earth Champion Taemin." The silence broke. Half the crowd erupted in shock and outrage. The other half erupted in amazed laughter. The betting markets went insane. Taemin helped Silcor stand up. "Sorry about that. Are you okay?" The blade dancer stared at him. "You have no honor." "Probably not," Taemin agreed. "But I'm alive." Silcor walked away without another word. Taemin stood alone in the arena, holding a broken floor panel, trying to understand that he had actually won. In the viewing box, a human journalist named Young Mi was frantically rewriting her article. She had prepared a piece about noble defeat. Now she was writing about the most shocking upset in tournament history. The next few days were chaos. The galaxy was divided on whether Taemin's victory was legitimate. Some called him a genius. Others called him a cheater. The High Arbiter reviewed the rules carefully and declared the victory valid. Tripping an opponent was not forbidden. Taemin's second match came 3 days later. His opponent was Cressistal, a warrior who could manipulate gravitational fields. Cressistal could make himself heavier or lighter, could pull objects toward himself or push them away. He had trained for 200 years in the sacred art of gravity dancing. Ji Woo was worried. "I don't see how you can counter gravitational manipulation." "Neither do I," Taemin admitted. "But let's think about it like an engineering problem. Gravity on this station is artificial, right? Generated by machines? Yes, but you can't access those machines during a match. Can't I?" Taemin smiled. "Watch." The match began. Cressistal immediately used his power to increase his weight, making himself immovable. Then, he tried to pull Taemin toward him, using gravitational attraction. Taemin felt the pull. Instead of fighting it, he went with it, but angled his movement to pass by Cressistal rather than straight into him. As he passed, he pulled out a small device from his pocket. "What is that?" Cressistal demanded. "Maintenance override remote. I fixed the arena's environmental systems last week. I still have access." Taemin pressed a button. The arena's artificial gravity in Cressistal's section shut off completely. Cressistal, who had made himself super heavy, suddenly had nothing to be heavy against. He floated upward, arms and legs flailing. His gravitational powers worked by manipulating fields, but with no baseline gravity to manipulate, they became much less effective. Taemin calmly walked over to the arena's emergency gravity controls, which every maintenance engineer knew how to access. He adjusted the settings, creating a gentle current that pushed Cresstal toward the boundary wall. "Do you yield?" Taemin called up. Cresstal spun helplessly in the air. "This is not how combat works." "Do you yield?" "Yes, I yield." Taemin restored the gravity. Cresstal fell to the floor with a heavy thump. "Victory to Earth Champion Taemin," the High Arbiter announced. He sounded less enthusiastic than before. The crowd's reaction was even more divided. Master Vorath was laughing. Young Mi was writing furiously. Ambassador Kyung-soo looked like he couldn't decide whether to be proud or horrified. The third match was against a telepathic warrior named Sylvess. She could read surface thoughts and predict her opponent's movements before they happened. She had never lost a match. Ji-woo had no data that would help. "How do you fight someone who can read your mind?" "I don't know," Taemin said honestly. "I guess I'll figure it out." "No." Taemin said in. 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 "I guess I'll figure it out." The match began. Sylvess stood calmly while Taemin approached. Every time he thought about moving left, she was already there to block. When he thought about moving right, she countered before he moved. "You cannot surprise me," Sylvess said. "I know your every intention." Taemin stopped thinking. Or rather, he tried to stop thinking about what he was going to do. Instead, he just moved. No plan. No strategy. Pure reaction. He grabbed a rock and threw it. Not at Sylvess, just in a random direction. Then he ran the opposite way. Then he stopped suddenly and went backward. Then he jumped. His movements made no sense. They followed no pattern. Even he didn't know what he was going to do until he did it. Sylvess tried to counter, but her predictions were useless. She was reading thoughts that Taemin himself didn't have yet. She grew frustrated, making mistakes. Finally, Taemin simply walked up to her during her confused state and tapped her shoulder. "Tag, you're it." She stared at him. "What?" "Just kidding. Do you yield?" Sylvess looked around the arena, at the scattered rocks Taemin had thrown randomly, at the nonsensical path he had traced across the floor. "Your mind is chaos." "Thank you. I yield." "I cannot predict chaos." She bowed slightly and left the arena. Taemin stood there, breathing hard. 3 matches. 3 victories. The galaxy was starting to realize that something strange was happening. This human wasn't winning through skill or strength. He was winning by refusing to fight the way everyone else fought. In her viewing room, Youngmi finished her latest article. The title was, "The Human Who Doesn't Know How to Lose Properly." Master Vorath was writing notes for his memoirs. "The day I saw perfection become a weakness," and in the tournament bracket, Taemin's name advanced to the next round. 5 matches away from facing the champion. 5 matches away from the impossible. The entire galaxy was watching now. Taemin had won 3 matches, and people were starting to take him seriously. Not everyone believed he could win the tournament, but nobody thought he was just lucky anymore. A xenopsychology professor named Bitna published a research paper that went viral across academic networks. It was titled, "The Advantage of Inexperience: How Humans Overcome Optimization Through Chaos." The paper argued that Taemin represented a fundamental difference in how humans approached problems compared to other species. Most species optimize, Bitna explained in an interview. They find the best solution and perfect it over generations. Humans seem to prefer adaptability over optimization. They would rather have 10 mediocre solutions they can switch between than one perfect solution they must always use. The interview played on screens throughout the station. Taemin watched it in Heijin's habitat while eating noodles. She makes me sound smarter than I am, he said. She makes you sound like a case study, his sister replied. How do you feel about being analyzed by scientists? Weird. But I guess if it helps people understand what I'm doing, that's good. He set down his bowl. I'm not sure I understand what I'm doing. Jiwoo arrived with news about his next opponent. You're in the quarterfinals now. 8 warriors left. Your next match is against Warlord Croxus of the Crimson Dominion. Tae-min pulled up the file. His appetite disappeared. Croxus was huge, heavily bioengineered for combat. His species had been warrior scientists for millennia, constantly improving their bodies for war. Croxus had 400 years of training and had never lost a match. His record was perfect. 47 victories, 0 defeats. His armor is integrated into his body, Jiwoo explained. Synthetic bone plating that can withstand plasma weapons. His strength is roughly 20 times that of a baseline human. His reaction time is measured in microseconds. End quote. End quote. What are his weaknesses? Tae-min asked. Jiwoo scrolled through the data. I can't find any. Every warrior who has faced him has been completely overwhelmed. He just walks forward and crushes his opponents. No strategy needed when you're that powerful. Tae-min studied the footage. Croxus didn't move with the grace of other warriors. He didn't need to. He simply advanced like a machine, absorbing any attacks, and destroyed anyone who got close. He's fought 47 times. Has he ever been forced to defend himself? No. His armor is too strong. Most opponents can't even scratch it. So he has 400 years of training, but all of it is offensive. He's never needed to learn defense. Tae-min leaned back. That's interesting. How is that helpful? You can't hurt him. Maybe not directly. Tae-min closed the file. But let's think about this differently. He's big. He's strong. He's armored. What would happen if I didn't try to fight him at all? What else can you do? Combat doesn't always mean direct fighting. Tae-min stood up and paced. I need to see the arena layout for the next match. Ambassador Kyung-soo came to visit that evening. He looked better than he had at the beginning. Less terrified, more amazed. Earth is watching every match, he told Tae-min. You're a hero back home. There are viewing parties in every major city. Children are wearing shirts with your face on them. That's horrifying, Tae-min said. It's wonderful. You've given humanity something to be proud of. The ambassador smiled. I won't lie to you. I didn't think you would win a single match. I'm glad to be wrong. Don't get too excited. Croxus is a different level of opponent. I know. But you've already done the impossible. 3 times. Perhaps 4 times. Is not so much harder. After the ambassador left, Tae-min couldn't sleep. He kept watching footage of Croxus. The warlord was truly terrifying. Every match ended the same way. Croxus advanced, absorbed whatever attacks came at him, reached his opponent, and ended the fight with overwhelming force. But there was something in the footage that caught Tae-min's attention. In all 47 matches, Croxus had never moved backward. He always advanced forward. Never retreated. Never dodged. Why would he? His armor protected him from everything. Tae-min pulled up the arena schematics. The next match would take place in a forest terrain simulation, with artificial trees and uneven ground. He studied every detail until morning came. The day of the match arrived. The arena was packed beyond capacity. Aliens from across the galaxy had come to see if the human could do it again. Tae-min entered the arena and felt small. The artificial forest was dense, with tall trees and thick undergrowth. Croxus entered from the other side, and the ground seemed to shake with each step. The warlord was 3 meters tall, covered in armor plating that looked like polished black stone. Human. Croxus's voice boomed across the arena. I have studied your previous matches. Your tricks will not work on me. I cannot be tripped. I cannot be moved. I cannot be harmed. Probably not, Taemin agreed. But I have to try. Begin, the High Arbiter announced. Kraxus immediately charged forward. The ground shook. Trees splintered when he pushed through them. Taemin ran. He had studied the terrain carefully. He knew which trees were load-bearing for the terrain structure. He led Kraxus toward a specific area, a place where the artificial ground was supported by fewer structural beams. Kraxus followed, roaring challenges. You cannot run forever. Don't need to run forever, Taemin muttered. Just need to run long enough. He reached the weak spot in the terrain. He could see the subtle differences in the ground, the places where the support was minimal. He pulled out his maintenance override remote again. That device will not save you, Kraxus charged. Taemin pressed several buttons in sequence. It was a maintenance code for emergency terrain reconfiguration. The support beams beneath a large section of the arena floor retracted. The ground collapsed into a pit about 4 meters deep. Kraxus, who had been charging forward and had never learned to retreat or dodge, fell straight into it. The warlord crashed into the bottom with tremendous force. The pit wasn't deep enough to seriously hurt him, but his massive armored body was wedged between the walls. Taemin looked down from the edge. Can you get out? Kraxus roared and tried to climb. His armor was too bulky. Every time he got purchase with one arm, his weight pulled him back down. He had spent 400 years learning to advance and attack. He had never trained for this situation. This is not honorable combat. Kraxus raged. I know. Sorry. Taemin sat down at the edge of the pit. But I really can't fight you directly. You're way too strong. Well, Taemin Sadance. 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 Kraxus struggled for 10 minutes. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Finally, exhausted and frustrated, the warlord stopped struggling. I cannot free myself without destroying the arena structure. Which would be against the rules, Kraxus admitted. This is unacceptable. Do you yield? I have never yielded. There's a first time for everything. Kraxus was silent for a long moment. His perfect record hung in the balance. 400 years of training, 47 victories, brought down by a pit in the ground. I yield, he finally said. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. The High Arbiter made the announcement. The crowd's reaction was beyond anything before. This wasn't just an upset. This was impossible. Kraxus was supposed to be unstoppable. Taemin helped arena maintenance pull Kraxus out of the pit. The warlord stood and looked down at the human. You did not defeat me in combat, Kraxus said. No, I didn't, Taemin agreed. But I solved the problem of how to win against someone I couldn't fight. That is not the warrior's way. I'm not a warrior. I'm an engineer. I solve problems. Kraxus studied him for a long moment, then did something surprising. He bowed slightly. Perhaps there is honor in solving impossible problems. I do not like your methods, but I acknowledge your victory. That night, the galaxy's communication networks were overwhelmed with discussion. The human had reached the semi-finals. Only 3 warriors stood between him and the champion. Master Vorath published the first chapter of his memoirs. It was titled, The Day Strength Lost to Cleverness. Young Mi's articles were being translated into hundreds of languages. She had gone from expecting to write about a noble failure to documenting the most extraordinary tournament run in history. Professor Bitna appeared in another interview. What we're seeing is the human advantage at work. Every other species has had millions of years to optimize their approach to combat. Humans are newcomers. They don't know the proper way to fight, so they fight improperly. And sometimes, improper is exactly what's needed. In his habitat, Taemin sat with Heijin and Ji-woo. They were looking at the semi-final bracket. 2 more matches, Heijin said quietly. 2 more wins, and you face the champion. I know, Do you think you can do it? Taemin looked at the profiles of his next opponents. Both were incredibly skilled. Both had centuries of training. Both had studied his previous matches and would be prepared for his tricks. I don't know, he said honestly. But I'll figure it out. That's what I do. Ji-woo pulled up new data. The betting markets have shifted. You're no longer the longest odds. People believe you might actually win. That's terrifying. Now I have expectations to live up to. You've already exceeded every expectation, his sister said. Whatever happens next, you've already done something incredible. Taemin smiled. Tell that to the kid who's going to wear my face on a t-shirt. He'll be really disappointed if I lose now. They laughed, but underneath the humor was tension. The semifinals were in 2 days. The matches would be harder. The opponents would be ready for him. But Taemin had something they didn't have. He had 2 weeks of figuring things out. And sometimes, that was enough. The semifinal match was different from the start. Taemin's opponent was Velshara, a warrior who had studied all of his previous matches carefully. She was a strategic fighter, patient and analytical. She had 200 years of experience, and she had spent the last week preparing specifically for him. The arena terrain was simple and open. No complex features to exploit. No environmental systems to manipulate. Just flat ground and 2 warriors. They're not giving you any advantages this time, Ji-woo said before the match. I noticed, Taemin replied. The match began. Velshara didn't charge or attack immediately. She circled slowly, watching him. Taemin tried his usual strategy of moving unpredictably. But Velshara didn't take the bait. She just waited. You cannot trick me, human, she called out. I have studied you. I know you rely on environmental factors and opponent predictability. I have removed both advantages. Taemin realized he was in trouble. Velshara was right. Without something to exploit, without an opponent who followed rigid patterns, his usual approach wouldn't work. He tried talking to distract her. So, 200 years of training. That's impressive. It is. Velshara continued circling. I have trained in 17 different martial disciplines. I can adapt to any fighting style. That's a lot of disciplines. Indeed. Which is why I will defeat you. You have no training. You only have cleverness. And cleverness alone is not enough. She was right, and Taemin knew it. He needed a new approach. He stopped moving and just stood still. You're absolutely correct. I can't beat you in a fair fight. Then you should yield now and save yourself the injury. Probably. But I have one advantage. You don't. What is that? I'm really, really stubborn. Taemin charged straight at her. It was the first time in the tournament he had directly attacked anyone. Velshara was surprised but quickly countered with perfect technique. The next 10 minutes were painful. Taemin had no real combat training. Velshara had 2 centuries of it. She landed strikes that made him gasp. She blocked his clumsy attacks effortlessly, but Taemin kept coming. Every time she knocked him down, he got back up. Every time she created distance, he closed it again. Why do you persist? Velshara asked, genuinely curious. You cannot win. Maybe not, Taemin said, breathing hard. Blood dripped from his nose. But I'm learning. And he was. Every exchange taught him something. The way she moved. The timing of her strikes. The patterns in her defenses. He wasn't learning proper technique, but he was learning her. After 20 minutes, something changed. Taemin started anticipating her moves, not because he understood martial arts, but because he understood patterns. Velshara was adaptive, but even adaptability followed rules. He managed to land a hit. Just one. A clumsy punch that caught her shoulder because he moved in a way that made no technical sense. Velshara stepped back, reassessing. You are learning during the fight itself. And It's kind of what humans do, Taemin said. We're not the best at anything, but we learn fast. The match continued. Taemin was still outmatched, but the gap was closing. Not because he was getting better at fighting, but because he was getting better at fighting her specifically. Finally, after 45 minutes, Velshera made a decision. This match could continue for hours. You will not quit, and I cannot defeat you without seriously injuring you. So I choose to yield. Not because you have beaten me in combat, but because your determination has earned respect. She bowed. You fight like a human. Perhaps that is enough. Taemin stood there, exhausted and bleeding, as the High Arbiter announced his victory. The crowd's reaction was complex. Some admired his persistence. Others thought Velshara had been too soft, but none of that mattered. Taemin had reached the finals. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Taemin recovered from his injuries. The entire galaxy prepared for the final match. Human versus champion. The maintenance engineer versus Kiex of the Brass Suns. Cheeks was legendary. He had won the last 3 Millennium Games, spanning 3,000 years. He had 340 years of training in the eternal form, a martial art considered mathematically perfect, every movement optimized, every technique flawless. I don't know how you beat him, Jiwoo admitted. She had analyzed every moment of Chix's fights. He's not predictable like the others. He adapts during combat. He's fast, strong, skilled, and intelligent. He has no exploitable weaknesses. Everyone has weaknesses, Taemin said. Not him. Trust me, I've looked. Ambassador Kyung-soo came to see Taemin the night before the final. Whatever happens tomorrow, Earth is proud of you. You've already accomplished the impossible. Just once more, Taemin said. I just need to do the impossible one more time. Hyjin held his hand. Are you scared? Terrified. But I've been scared this whole time. Fear is just information. What's it telling you? That tomorrow is going to hurt. But also, that I've come too far to give up now. The day of the final arrived. The arena was filled beyond capacity. Aliens stood in every available space. Viewing screens had been set up throughout the station. Back on Earth, billions of humans watched. Taemin entered the arena. The terrain was neutral, similar to his semi-final match. No advantages. Then Kiex entered, and Taemin understood why he was champion. The crystalline warrior moved with impossible grace. Every step was precise. Even his breathing seemed optimized. He was living perfection. Human, Chix's voice, was like music. I have watched all of your matches. You are remarkable. Thank you. You fight by breaking rules you were never taught. You improvise because you do not know the proper forms. You survive through adaptation. Kiex smiled. But I have spent 3,000 years learning to adapt. You cannot surprise me. The High Arbiter raised his arms. The entire galaxy held its breath. Begin. Chix moved like lightning. Taemin barely dodged the first strike. The second strike grazed his arm. The third would have ended the match if Taemin hadn't rolled away. He tried his usual tactics. Unpredictable movement. Environmental awareness. Psychological tricks. None of it worked. Kiex countered everything. Where other warriors had been confused by Taemin's chaos, Cheeks simply adapted to it. After 5 minutes, Taemin was bleeding from multiple cuts. Cheege hadn't taken a single hit. You cannot win, Cheeks said. Not cruel, just factual. I am better than you in every way. I know. Taemin admitted. You're perfect. Free. 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 The eternal form is perfect. I am merely its student. Taemin had an idea. It was crazy. It probably wouldn't work, but he was losing anyway. He stopped running and dodging. Instead, he stood still and watched Kix's movements. Really watched them. What are you doing? Cheeks asked. Learning. Chix attacked again. Taemin didn't try to dodge. He tried to copy the movement. He failed completely, taking a hard hit to his ribs. But he saw the pattern. "You're trying to learn the eternal form during combat?" Keeks sounded amazed. "That's impossible. It takes decades to learn even the basics." "Probably," Taemin gasped. "But I have to try something." For the next 10 minutes, Taemin did something no warrior had ever attempted. He tried to learn his opponent's martial art in real time, during a fight, while being beaten badly. He failed more than he succeeded. His form was terrible. His technique was wrong. But slowly, painfully, he began to understand the rhythm of the eternal form. Not mastery, just recognition. Chix was fascinated. "You're actually learning. It's crude and imperfect, but you're learning." "I'm good at learning," Taemin said. Blood dripped from his mouth. "It's kind of the human thing." The match continued. Taemin's movements gradually became less chaotic. He started anticipating Keex's techniques because he was beginning to understand them. Still not enough to win, but enough to survive longer. 20 minutes into the match, Keeks paused. "You cannot defeat me with my own art. Even learning this quickly, you are still 300 years behind." "I know." Taemin stood up straight despite his pain. "But now, I understand something about the eternal form." "Taemin, what is that?" "It's perfect. Every movement is exactly correct. Which means, it's predictable, if you understand the rules. Understanding and countering are different things." "True." Taemin smiled despite his pain. "But, what if I use your perfect form, imperfectly?" He moved forward using a technique from the eternal form. But he did it wrong. Deliberately wrong. He broke the form in a way that created an opening that shouldn't exist in perfect technique. Cheeks moved to counter according to the proper response. But Taemin's imperfect execution meant the proper response didn't work. Cheeks had to hesitate, just for a microsecond, to recalculate. That microsecond was enough. Taemin's clumsy, broken technique slipped through and landed a strike on Cheeks's chest. The champion stepped back, more surprised than hurt. "You're using my own art against me by doing it wrong? I told you. Imperfect can be an advantage." The final exchange lasted another 10 minutes. Taemin used his crude, improvised version of the eternal form, deliberately breaking it in ways that created unpredictable openings. Keeks adapted, but even perfect adaptation took time when facing something that shouldn't be possible. Finally, Taemin saw his chance. Chix executed a perfect defensive sequence. Taemin responded with a technique so badly performed it was almost unrecognizable, creating an opening that violated every principle of the eternal form. He struck. Just once. Just barely. But it was a clean hit to Kix's center point. The scoring system registered the point. The match was over. The arena was silent. Nobody could believe what they had just seen. "Victory to Earth Champion Taemin," the High Arbiter finally announced. The silence broke. Half the crowd erupted in celebration. The other half sat in stunned disbelief. Humans throughout the galaxy cheered. Keeks stood and bowed deeply. "You have taught me something today." "What's that?" "That perfection can be a cage. I spent 300 years perfecting the eternal form, and you defeated it in 30 minutes by refusing to be perfect." He smiled. "Perhaps humans have wisdom that we long-lived species have forgotten." Taemin could barely stand. His body hurt everywhere, but he had done it. 2 weeks of figuring it out had somehow been enough. They carried him from the arena on a medical stretcher. Jiwoo and Heijin ran to meet him. Ambassador Kyung-soo was crying happy tears. "You did it," his sister said. "You actually did it." "Yeah," Taemin managed to say. "Can I sleep now?" Later, after the medical treatment and the ceremonies and the countless interviews, Taemin sat alone in his habitat. The station had offered him everything: fame, wealth, a position training future warriors. He declined it all. He was an engineer, not a warrior. He had figured out how to win the tournament, but he had no interest in doing it again. 5 years later, the station prepared for the next set of qualifying matches. Young warriors from across the galaxy trained with new techniques. They studied traditional forms, but they also studied adaptability. They learned perfect technique, but they also learned improvisation. A young alien warrior was asked about their training philosophy. They answered, "I train in the sacred forms of my ancestors. But I also train in chaos and adaptation." A human once proved that perfection is predictable. "I will not make the same mistake." In a small apartment on Earth, Taemin fixed a broken coffee maker and smiled. He had returned to his normal life, fixing things and figuring out problems. Somewhere in the galaxy, warriors were changing how they trained because of him. That was enough.